Hi guys, it's Mike making another video. This time we're going to get into the details of how ranged touch attacks using splash weapons work. So that's a very specific thing, and it can get kind of, there's a rabbit hole of rules you can go down here, and you'll see it's almost comical as I go through each of these rules trying to explain how this works. On the surface, there's not much to it, but I thought I might give you some background and a little bit deeper look at how the rules work. As usual, I'm not working from a script, so bear with me as we try to get through this. So I've got Owlbear Rodeo pulled up here. We have got a couple of goblins and a troll who are fighting a couple of skeletons, and this guy is a zombie. I didn't have a good zombie token, so just pretend that looks like a zombie. And let's see how this goes. So first off, I think we will have the skeleton try to chuck a vial, a flask of acid at this goblin here. So let's see how we're going to work that. First, let's go find out how acid works. It's a splash weapon, which is a ranged touch attack with an increment of 10 feet. It deals a d6 points of acid damage, and every creature within 5 feet of the point where the acid hits takes 1 point of acid damage from the splash. So that seems pretty straightforward. We make a ranged touch attack against our target. He's going to take a d6, and then anybody standing next to him is going to take 1 point of acid. And keep in mind, this isn't discriminating. It's every creature. So it could be your buddies. It could be, an innocent bystander. It could be whatever. Let's get into the details kind of deep about what a ranged touch attack is and how all of this stuff works. So if we go to the next rule, okay, first let's look at touch attacks. If you don't know what a touch attack is, it basically is exactly what it sounds like. We're trying to touch somebody, so we don't care how good their armor is, and that will make most characters a lot easier to hit. Now, if you come upon somebody who's mostly deriving their armor class from their dexterity and dodge bonuses, then their touch attack is going to be almost as high as their normal armor class. But for the big paladin walking around with a shield and armor and that sort of thing, his touch attack is going to be a lot lower than his AC, his normal AC. And if you look at any stat block for any monster, here's the goblin, you'll see that it first lists their AC, then it's got their touch attack. And the difference here is because this goblin is getting 2 points from armor and 1 point from his shield. Well, he doesn't get that armor or that shield. Those 3 points go away when you're trying to touch him because, again, I don't care how well armored you are when I'm trying to touch you. Okay? So we've got our acid. We figured out what a touch attack is. What's a ranged attack? Well, a ranged attack is just like shooting a bow or a crossbow or anything else, and all the same rules apply because throwing this vial of acid is a weapon attack, so it's subject to anything that would be in effect if I was shooting a crossbow or throwing a dagger or something like that. So I've got to deal with the shooting into melee rules. So if I'm throwing at this goblin but my skeleton buddy is up here attacking him, then I'm shooting into a melee, and if I don't have precise shot, I'm taking -4 to that. We're also subject to cover rules. Let's see, do I have the cover rule pulled up? Yeah, so here we go. So this would be the soft cover rule also applies. So creatures, even your enemies, can provide cover against ranged attacks, giving you a +4 to AC. So here, if my skeleton buddy was engaged in melee here and I'm throwing, let's say, from here, then not only am I -4 for shooting into a melee if I don't have precise shot, but the goblin is going to be +4 to his AC because my pal is providing cover. Now, of course, I could move around and get an unobstructed shot, but for the purposes of the example, I wanted you to see that. So let's see, we've talked about shooting into a melee. So typically, if you're throwing a weapon at somebody, you would be subject to a -4 non-proficiency penalty. Like, say you were trying to throw your sword at somebody, which it wasn't designed to be thrown, so you'd take a penalty for throwing something that isn't really a thrown weapon. In the case of splash weapons, it specifically says that you're not subject to that -4 non-proficiency penalty. So that doesn't apply. And it also doesn't get your strength modifier, and most of this stuff doesn't apply, so don't get confused on how a thrown weapon works versus a splash weapon. Next thing is there are very specific rules on how thrown splash weapons work. Basically, it says it's a touch attack, which we've already talked about. It says it's ranged, which we've already talked about. It says it doesn't take a non-proficiency penalty, which we've already talked about. And then it shows you a couple of options. If you don't want to throw at the creature's touch attack, you can just throw at a specific grid intersection. If you do that, you're throwing against an AC 5. However, nobody takes direct hit damage, not dealt to any creature. Instead, it all is splash damage. So it's a good way to put a lot of splash damage on things and not have to worry about hitting a high touch AC. But if you actually want to hit somebody, you're going to have to roll against their actual touch AC. And then if you miss, you roll a d8 and use this little chart down here to decide where it lands. This can be kind of comical because if you remember, the acid's range increment is 10 feet. So if you want to be close enough, let's get this guy out of melee. If I throw from here, I'm out 1 range increment, which if you don't know about range increments, here we go. Am I in the right spot? Well, I may not be finding it. Oh, here it is. So the range is 10 feet. Beyond this range, the attack takes a cumulative -2 penalty for each full range increment that is the distance to the target. So if we go here, if my guy tries to throw his acid flask at this goblin from here, he's 5, 10, 15 feet away, so he'd be -2 to that attack for the range increment. If he moves up so that he's only 10 feet away, and then we go to our splash weapon rules, if he happens to miss and then roll a 1 on the d8, the flask is going to land right in front of him, and it's going to get him in the splash. So there's a trade-off when you're throwing these things because they have such short range increments. Either stay back and take the penalty, or move up and risk the fact that the chance that you're going to be in the area. All right, so let's actually just run through a quick example, and I think we'll be done here. You've probably got this by now. So let's say this, you know what, let's do it backwards. Let's do it the other way. Let's say that, let's do it like this, if you guys will just bear with me a second. Let's say that this goblin is throwing at this skeleton, okay? He maybe started over here, but he got close enough so he's not taking a range penalty. He's 10 feet away. He's going to chuck some acid at this skeleton. If I want to know what his chance to hit with it is, I can go over here to the goblin, and if I'm fortunate enough that this is a monster that has a ranged attack, I can quickly see that his ranged attack bonus is +4. But if it's not here, I can calculate it really quickly too. And all I have to really do is look at his dex bonus, which is 2, right? A 15 is a +2. His base attack is +1. So now we're 2 + 1 is 3. And goblins are small. And if you look at the size chart, I told you this went down a rabbit hole of rules, you'll see that small creatures always get a +1 to their AC and to their attack bonuses. That's what this little note down here tells you. So since he's small, goblin, since he's small, that +4 comes from 1 for his size, 1 for his base attack, and 2 for dex. That's +4. All right, and he's throwing at this skeleton, which has a touch AC of 12. So let's say he throws and he gets an 11. All right, so he missed the skeleton, and he has to roll a d8 to decide where it hits. All right, so then you'd go to this little chart right here. Let's say he rolls a 2. So it goes to the southwest of where the target was, and it lands directly on the zombie. All right, well, directly is a funny word there because you don't get direct hit damage unless you actually hit your target. So even though the flask falls right there, everything in its area only takes splash damage because the goblin missed. All right, so just because it landed in this guy's square, it didn't hit him. So it lands here, and if we go to look at our alchemical weapons, we see that a direct hit does a d6 points of damage. Well, I missed. I don't get that anywhere. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. A direct hit does a d6 point of damage, but the splash does 1 point to everybody. So here, the zombie and both of these skeletons would take 1 point, and nobody got a direct hit. Okay? I could also, let's say this goblin moved up, right? Then now when I do the same thing, I'm going to be -4 because I'm shooting into a melee. And if I hit my target, I'm going to splash on my goblin buddy. All right, and if we just turn the tables real quickly, and let's say that the skeleton is throwing at these guys. When you're throwing at a target that is larger than just one 5-foot square, you pick any of the squares to be where the target location is. So for example, if the skeleton is throwing at this troll, as long as he picks one of these front 2 squares, he's within 10 feet. But if for some reason he wants to target his backside back here, then he's moved out a range increment. Okay, and if he moves up, then he's making a ranged attack in melee, and he's going to be subject to an op attack. Of course, this troll has reach, so even throwing it from here is going to trigger an op attack from the troll. So yeah, lots of rules to keep up with. But hopefully that helps understand it just a little bit. And if you have any questions about it, post them in the comments or let me know, and I will try to help. Thanks.